Welcome to Raising Special Needs Kids. Real conversations, real hope, and real stories for families walking the special needs journey. Our host is Monica Schmelter, sister to a brother with Down syndrome, and we're here to remind you, you're not alone.
Hi, I am Monica, and this is the Raising Special Needs Kids podcast, your place for connection and community, where we bring together special needs families to offer advice, to listen, to give tips, and also to share some funny stories about our special needs families and kids. And my guest today is Tammy Osborne. Tammy, so good to have you here.
Thank you, Monica. It's so nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it took us several tries to get you here. We had to reschedule a lot.
But we made it.
Yeah, here we are. So Tammy, you're a mom, and I would love to hear about your family.
Okay. Well, there's 5 of us. So my husband, Renee, and we this June made 34 years. I always have to stop and do the math that we've been married.
Congratulations on that.
Thank you. And we have 3 children. Our oldest is Jordan, known as Ladybug, and she is 23. She has Down syndrome. And then Anna Jo is our next daughter. She's 22. And then we have Caleb. He's our son, and he is 20.
Wow.
So there's 5 of us.
Yes, and you've got 3 20-something children.
Yes, ma'am.
And Jordan, her nickname is Ladybug. Is
Ladybug,
that correct?
yes.
And she's 23, and she has Down syndrome.
Correct.
So you and I, we have that in common. I have a brother, Donnie, that had Down syndrome. So I shared really as a sibling with my family the diagnosis and just all the things that happened. Did you know before Ladybug was born that she had Downs?
We did not. Only when that little face popped out did we realize. It was kind of like, Houston, we have a problem. That is not the face I was expecting.
So you found out at birth.
We did.
How did you and your husband respond?
Very differently. I think, and I think is a story for another day, how dads deal differently, I think than moms. But it was really that you're on your knees pretty quickly, and just a range of emotions. I was a nurse in the health system where Jordan was born, and she was born at 10:30 at night, and they had to ship her during the night because she had a major heart defect, which we were also not, expecting. I mean, I went into labor early with her, but I remember getting to St. Mary's in Knoxville the next morning. They took her during the night. They took me the next morning, or we went the next morning, and someone from support services. And we had not had a conversation with the physician at this point for an official diagnosis. And someone from support services came over, and she had a piece of paper folded in half. And I knew her. I knew her well, working in that system. And it had the website for NDSS, for the National Down Syndrome Society. And I was so angry. It was like we just weren't ready, for it at that. So just a range of emotions, a lot of questions, a lot of why. Yeah. Why, Lord?
Exactly. Because it's something, that we think, well, God, you could have stopped this from happening. And yet he allows things that we don't always understand. And I remember, Tammy, thinking that about my brother. And I was just 11 and a half, I was in the 6th grade. But I remember thinking, oh, God, my poor mom, look at how sad she is. And my dad was really quiet. But I knew that he was struggling. As you say, men and women respond differently. The love for the child is the same. They're just different responses. And I do think it's such a shame that when it is a special needs child, you can't reduce a person just to a diagnosis. So I'm sure you seeing that on the paper just hit you entirely the wrong way, because here you've been brought to another hospital for a heart health challenge. And that had to have you and your husband entirely scared as well.
Oh, yeah, that was definitely a different, and I had been a cardiac nurse, so that I actually was more comfortable with that than the Down syndrome diagnosis in terms of we just had not had those conversations with the physician yet. We didn't even know that she had a heart defect at that point. It wasn't until later that afternoon. I think the other big thing for me was one of the nurse practitioners, a friend of mine, had left this little lamb in Jordan's. She came by to visit, but we weren't there yet, and she left this little lamb and this little stuffed animal, and on it had the verse in Samuel, for this child I prayed. And I remember seeing that and being, again, angry, bitter, like, no, this is definitely not the child that I prayed for. This was not the vision, when
Well, and she's your
for your first.
Yeah, she's your first baby, and you're still young. Like, we're just not thinking that at those times. And I can remember, Tammy, that I thought, with my brother, we had another family member who, she partied a lot while she was pregnant. She did drugs. I mean, I love her dearly, smoked, and her baby was fine. And I thought, well, here's my sweet mom, who's probably never even smoked one cigarette, who doesn't drink and doesn't use drugs. We got my brother. I was surprised, though. I was filled with instant love for my brother. I remember when he came home, just thinking he was just the cutest and the best, and I was so happy and so proud. I was also scared because he had a heart issue, and so they were saying, like, he might not live long. And I just think unless you've been in that situation to a family, like what that's doing, that roller coaster ride of, oh, we thought we were having a baby. Like, I thought I was getting a baby. I didn't know boy or girl. I thought I was getting a brother or a sister. And I was hoping that it was a girl so I wouldn't have to share a room with my sister. So that was my only disappointment with him. That meant my sister and I had to share a room. But it's just such a wide range of emotions. And when it's your first child, right, you don't have any experience to know how to deal with that.
You don't. And at the time, we were very active in our church and in our Sunday school class alone. I always share the story that there were, I think, 10 or 12 of us that were pregnant at the same time. And all of them already had a child. So it was our first. And I remember that was one of the thoughts going through my mind is like, well, this is our first. They already have a healthy child. Why couldn't it have been them instead of us? Just there's a lot of whys that you go through. And I also think that when you're dealing with the Down syndrome diagnosis on top of, well, I guess I should say the other way around, you're dealing with like a major heart issue, or it could be some other major health issue. But when you're dealing with that, it really does allow you, and maybe this was just me as a former cardiac critical care nurse, it was so easy to shift my focus to that because that was solvable. That was fixable in my mind. And so going through those steps of getting ready for surgery, just trying to get her to gain weight, that was our biggest challenge the first month. But I think it actually gave me something else to sort of latch on to rather than process those emotions, around the Down syndrome.
Right. Because you were a cardiac nurse, so you knew, like, this is treatable. You've seen other
this
babies.
Will go away.
Yeah, you've seen other kids, like, we can fix this.
Right.
But the Down syndrome
this
portion,
is never going away.
That's lifelong. And that's, you don't always know, like, because there's a wide range also of Down syndrome children and, like, high functioning, more middle and then lower. So you don't even know that at birth.
You don't. And you have, especially we had tried for a long time to get pregnant. We'd been married 11 years. We had tried for several years to get pregnant. And when you get pregnant and you have this whole vision of what that's going to look like, and it's like somebody just takes a big eraser and just erases all of that. My husband had his own sort of range of emotions. I remember we were over at St. Mary's and they let us stay in a room just down the hall. The wing was closed, but it was so close to and we just weren't sure. Like her condition was, very serious. And I remember one of his best friend growing up finally got through to us on the phone. And I remember him saying, my chest hasn't felt this heavy since my mom died. It's just such a range of emotions in terms of you just don't know, the unknown.
Yeah.
Not what you had planned.
Right.
And it's not just temporary. It is the rest of your life is changed forever.
Yes. And the expectations for the rest of your life and what that would look like for Ladybug and for you and your husband. And So just wrapping like your head and heart, I don't think you can even do that in those early moments. That's something that you process and that you go through. And yet you had 2 more children after Ladybug.
Anna was a surprise. I thought I had the flu because Jordan was 6 months old, still had oxygen, still had a feeding tube, and I realized I was pregnant. But when you've tried, like for the first one, and you try and have no luck, you just don't expect it to happen like that.
Of course not. I mean, because I think about that. If praying, right, for 11 years or so to get pregnant, it takes that long to get pregnant, and now you think it's the flu, but like 6 months later, it's a baby. You're pregnant.
Yeah, so they're 14 and a half months apart. And it's interesting. I look back, and I think there were times where I never really could get a peace when I was pregnant with Jordan, and complete peace when I was pregnant with Anna. And the day that I went into labor and we were in the car driving out of the neighborhood, my husband said, "Are you nervous?" And I said, "Not one bit." He was like, "Really?" Which told me he was, And I said, "I feel like she is our gift. I feel like this is our reward or our gift for staying faithful through all of this with Jordan."
Because staying faithful requires, right, being a mature follower of Christ. Not that we don't have our questions and our whys and our sorrow, but that we stay the course with Christ. We stay the course with our faith, despite the fact that your prayer was answered. You did get a baby, and then you're getting another one. It just wasn't what you imagined for the first.
He had a different plan.
He had a different plan.
And we did.
And then you had a baby boy.
And then we had a baby boy. So 22 months later, Caleb. And we had a lot of conversations. If you had asked us when we initially started thinking about having kids, my husband did not want kids initially. And so he's older. And when we started having conversations about, okay, we have Ladybug, who will always require some sort of assistance. We have Anna, and, we're older. Like I was 32, 33, when we started having kids. And I remember thinking, we had the conversation around, Anna is going to have a sister that needs some assistance, and she is going to have 2 older parents. And so we feel like she needs a helper. She's going to need some support. And so maybe we should have a third. And Caleb.
Well, that was very insightful on your part to even be able to think that through. Your other 2 children, they're younger than your Ladybug. How have they responded to Ladybug?
I think wonderful. They're both wonderful with her. And, I tell people I think that they are better humans because of Jordan. They and their friends, have been exposed to Ladybug, and they see a different side of Ladybug than what they would see, just in the hallways at school or a kid that they were not familiar with. And they're great with her, each in a different way, in their own way. Anna's and Caleb both. They're awesome with her.
Yeah. I think, and I've shared, of course, being a sibling of a Down syndrome brother, he changed my life forever in terms of compassion and empathy and love. And people used to always say, "But he's your parents' favorite." And I used to just say, "Well, but he needs to be their favorite. He needs more attention. And I want him to have that." And my sister felt the same way. Like we knew. And we protected him, as best we could. Sometimes kids didn't always make the kindest comments. And gosh, Tammy, sometimes adults didn't think through what they said before they said it. So my sister and I were, on guard to be his fierce protector. And, but it did change us as people. And I'm so grateful. He's the biggest blessing I think that God ever gave our family. And I don't think that I would have come to faith in Christ without him. And I think that that's one of the things that I want everybody to understand, is that special needs children, they're a gift. they may not be what we planned or how we planned, and there may be challenges and things we'd prefer not to face. But if we do face those things, there will be such grace and growth and just such a blessing to our family.
Oh, she has blessed us. You'll hear me say this. She has blessed us way more than we will ever bless her.
Yes.
And I cannot wait until Caleb and Anna are older and to hear their story of what Ladybug has meant in their life and how she has impacted their life. And especially after they are married and have kids of their own. And I do think that, Renee and I saw this at Duke when Jordan was there having her open heart surgery. You see a lot, in those PICUs. And there were many days where we said, thank you, Lord, for Down syndrome, because it's perspective.
Yes.
You think when you're living in the moment, that when they transferred her and we were over at St. Mary's the next day, it's hard to imagine like anything worse, and I hate to say it that way, but you're in it's your grief in the moment. It's your chaos in the moment. And it's hard to think about anyone else's. But then when you come up out of that and you start to see other kids or other situations that families were dealing with while we were at Duke, there were so many times in that waiting room that we just said, thank you, Lord, for Down syndrome. And Caleb had something that he had to do with school a couple of weeks ago, and he ended up going to a camp and was assigned to like a child with special needs. And him telling me the story of how it went, what I could hear, and what he actually said a couple of times is, I just remember thinking, thank you for Ladybug. Mm. And so I think he had a chance, but it does change your perspective.
Yes.
Not just on children, but life. Because I think when you've walked through that, it's like, okay.
Yeah. And it's an experience that just greatly enhances our lives. The grief and all of that, that's all legitimate, right? We have to process through all of that. That's a part of it. But if we will stay faithful, God will get us, to where we need to be. And I know my husband and I, we have one son, and he's grown, and he is married, and they have a daughter, and hopefully more babies to come. But, with my brother, he was very, very close to my brother and loved my brother. And God gifted my son with just a very high IQ. He's just a brilliant young man. But my brother just looked up to him, and he would always say, will you be my co-pilot? And my son would always say, yes, I'll be your co-pilot. And then when he got dementia and that part, and that was just a few months, God was merciful, that it wasn't years. But when Donnie was like more present, he would say, are you still my co-pilot? And our son would say, I will be your co-pilot, Donnie, as long as you'll have me. And I thought, see what God did in his life to just give him that understanding and that love. So fast forwarding, what is your Ladybug like now as a 20-something?
Oh, gosh. She definitely has her routine. We will joke and say, she is routine to the point of if you give her task, you can probably rest assured that it's going to get done, maybe more so than if you give the other two a task.
Absolutely.
Trying to be tactful about it. They're going to listen to, but she is just, and so she has this routine. So and she'll go through, it's different phases. Like right now she's on a kick where, at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, you may hear this clicking sound, and she's toggling the switch on her bedside lamp. And I will say, if anyone drives through our neighborhood at 3 or 4 in the morning, they probably think we have a ghost upstairs because there's this light flickering on and off in the upstairs window. She gets on the treadmill, and it might be at 4 o'clock in the morning. It might be in the afternoon, but she has like 5 things on her chore list for the day. And walk on the treadmill for 15 minutes is one of them, but she might stay on there an hour and a half, and it might be at 4:00 in the morning, and then she's in her pajamas and tennis shoes. So she has her iPad. She loves music. We say that she has probably set the record for the most times that Beauty and the Beast has been played on the iPad, the soundtrack in the movie on the iPad. She loves going with her dad to the gym. He coaches girls basketball at Brentwood High School, and so she loves going to the gym with him, which she loves going anywhere with him.
She's a daddy's girl.
She is 100% a daddy's girl, and we are all aware of it. But she loves going with him to the gym,
That's wonderful.
and helping with the basketball, or sometimes she just sits in the corner. She's got her little spot at the table, and the girls all love her. The basketball team, they took when they did team photos last year at the end, they were like, Ladybug, come over. We want to get a team. So she was in the team photo with them. And so it's just she just has her routine during the day. And,
My brother had a routine too. Even his movies that he liked to watch, he watched them in a certain order. He would pile up his DVDs in that order, and that's the order that he would watch them. And he was very faithful with any and all chores, much more so than my sister and I ever were when we were little. We would try to get out of the chores.
She's got her route, just if you put it on that list, she's going to do it, and she's going to check it off. And she's not very verbal, very high cognitively, but not very verbal. And so we can understand her just, in context of the situation. But just her routine. And so if you put it on that checklist, she will, sweep under the table when you're done eating. She'll go get the, she's going to do that. Or
That's awesome. Having a child that likes to do the chores and gets them done, that's an amazing blessing right
laundry
there,
is her thing. She loves, so any given time at our house, you may see piles of laundry, but she will do the laundry. She will stand in the laundry room until she can move it from the washer to the dryer, till it finishes drying. She takes it out. She sorts everyone's, and then she folds hers and takes hers upstairs, and everybody else's pile is left there. But laundry is her thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's the dishwasher, which means the dishwasher may run with one glass and one bowl.
Well, hey, it needed to be done. I mean, that one bowl or that one glass, it needs to be cleaned.
Yes.
And I think that's a part of being a parent of a special needs child, is to just be able to smile and laugh at things like that. What difference does it make if there's one glass or one bowl? If that's making her happy and she's keeping the house clean and doing the dishwasher, if you can just laugh and go with that, it just makes life so much easier. We did that with my brother all the time. You mentioned the girls bringing her into the basketball picture and Ladybug just being loved. Is she having good experiences in school? I know she's mainstreamed.
Well, she's actually out of school now.
Okay.
So she did the transition program so they can remain in the public school system until the year that they turn 22. And so she did that. So she graduated, and then she had 3 years in the T2, or the Transition to Life program. And then just recently, we started her at Brentwood Baptist Church. They have an Embrace. It's called Embrace, their special needs program there. So she just started going there. She goes on Mondays and Wednesdays from 10 to 1. And we felt like she needed some more social interaction other than just going with Renee to Planet Fitness or going with Renee to the high school during the day. And I did not want her just, staying on her iPad all day, every day from sun up to sundown. And so we just enrolled her. So she's having a good experience there, but we just started that.
That's wonderful. And it sounds like she's a popular young lady for sure.
It's hard not to love. You just, that sweet smile and that personality, she's just easy.
Yeah. Is she okay with your son and your daughter, moving out to go to college or do those kinds of things?
I don't know that. I think the only difference that we noticed is, so Anna left. Now Anna has graduated, and Anna is back at home with us right now, working and saving up.
Sure.
And when the kids were always home, teenagers, or college kids, they're upstairs in their room.
Sure.
We're downstairs. And Jordan was upstairs in her room. And then Anna left and went away to college. Caleb was upstairs. Jordan was upstairs. When Caleb left, all of a sudden we noticed at night, Jordan is downstairs with us, sitting in the chair on her iPad, but she was downstairs with us now. And so I think just them being gone from upstairs, she stayed downstairs with us, in the evenings. But I don't really know how much of that she processes. I don't know how much of that she understands. And at the end of the day, I don't know how much it changes her world.
Exactly. And it was like that for my brother. And it was the same thing. When both of my sister and I got to the place that we were out of the house, he would come downstairs with my parents and sit. And he did his own thing, or they followed what he wanted, like what he wanted to watch on TV and that sort of thing. But it was like, I guess he didn't want to be upstairs by himself.
I think so.
Who can blame? I wouldn't either. I'd want to come down. And my parents, enjoyed having him. And they pretty much let him pick what he wanted to do and watch television. But it was like that up until he got sick and then went to heaven. They were able to do that. My parents cared for him all the way until he went to heaven, and they were 86.
Wow.
And they were still caretaking. And I thought, I don't know how many people realize it's a lifetime commitment.
It is.
And some people do group homes and do other things, and there's nothing wrong with that. My parents just didn't want to do it. So we all just helped as much as they'd let us, but they were just phenomenal parents. And they just loved and cared for him like they did my sister and I. It was just different. I don't think he processed that I went to college away and got married and like that he was still at home. I think he was happy to be home.
Right.
And happy in
and
that situation.
They live in their world. And, unless it's an impact, I think, to them. Now, I did notice Anna graduated in May, moved back home. And so once again, Jordan is back upstairs in the evening. If Anna's upstairs, Jordan is upstairs, in her room. But I think it was maybe back in the summer or maybe even spring break. And Anna was home for a short time. And we were talking about a trip or something. And she said, yeah, you and Dad should go do that. And I said, well, we have to think about like Ladybug. And she got real quiet and she said, I think it just hit me that it's a 24-hour thing. Like, that doesn't go away, like, ever. And I remember thinking, she's processing this, because when we are not here any longer, she's realizing, and that brings up fears of its own as a parent, and planning for the future. And it's a lot to process.
It's so much.
And to think about.
It's so much. And I remember when I would try to open the conversation with my parents, they didn't want to talk about it or think about it. And so I would say, we will take Donnie, like we will care for him. He is our brother. And they were just like, nope, we're going to do it. That's our prayer, that we will outlive him. And God did that for them. And I'm thankful for that. But that's not the case with all parents. There are things that you have to think about and that you have to plan about. And I always felt a certain sense of sadness for my parents that they never really got to be empty nesters. They didn't get that part of their life, but they wouldn't have it any other way. They realized what a blessing that my brother was and still is to our family, even though he's in heaven. These are just things that most parents don't have to think about.
Mm-hmm. And I think for them as siblings, we were having a conversation at the kitchen table one time, and like Anna said something about, well, Jordan will be living with me. And Caleb said, well, I just assumed she'd be living with me. And I'm thinking, this is a great problem to have.
Yes.
They are both thinking about that. But that was like middle school or high school. But then having that conversation with her last year and watching her process that now as about to graduate from college, thinking about what's next, the next phase of her life, and whether that's marriage or kids or whatever, perspective in terms of Jordan as a factor at some point.
Well,
for her and for Caleb.
Absolutely. Because my sister and I said, we would do 6 months on, 6 months off. She would take him for 6 months. I would. We talked all about, what that would look like. My husband and I got a different house so that my brother could have his own, bonus
space.
Room and bathroom and bedroom. And, there's like 1,200 square feet upstairs. And we thought that would be like a little apartment for him, and he would be happy with that. It's not the way that God had planned. It didn't work out that way, but we had planned for that. And you have to think about that. And we have to plan because none of us know what that will look like.
You do. And it isn't just the logistical planning of it. It's at our age, when you look ahead to retirement and financial planning, there's a lot that you have to think about in terms of not just where will they live or who will care for them, but how will they care for them and what resources will they have to care for them. And not, you can't plan for, when people think about planning for retirement and like what's enough and how much is enough and for how long, well, obviously none of us know when that time's going to be, but then you're adding another person to that. And how long, will they live and what does that require?
Yes.
And so it's just it's a lot.
It is a lot
to plan for and to think about.
It's a lot. And I got married at 21, like right out of college. And so it was important to me, like just even when I was first dating my husband, before marriage was ever a conversation, I needed to know that he could love my brother like I do. And that's not something that most young people, when they're starting out, have to think about that. It's like, he could be ours someday. And like, are you good with that? Do you know how to do this? And those are just things. And again, I wouldn't change anything. I love my brother so much and I miss him. But these are things that you do when you love somebody. And I think that's one of the things that having a special needs child teaches people to do. So much unconditional love, so much whatever we need to do, somehow God is going to make a way for that. Is that how you feel as well?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And even as like Anna is in a serious relationship, and he calls her Queen. He calls Jordan Queen. And Anna would joke in high school. She's like, we will pass her in the hallway and she will speak to him and not me, kind of thing. Or when he first started coming to the house, like he would bring Jordan something. And I thought, okay, one, he's been raised well. And two, like, okay, he is okay with this.
Yes.
Now, obviously, what does that look like down the road in terms of being responsible for, if Anna is responsible for Ladybug or Caleb is responsible for Ladybug, what does that look like in terms of relationships? But you just have to pray that
and you can
God's
see,
in control of that too.
Yes, that the care and concern is there. And that is so much a lesson, right? That God is in control and that he loves Ladybug more than you do, though that's hard to fathom, right?
Her ticket's punched.
It doesn't make sense, right? But he does, and that somehow he's going to see that through. If you had to leave parents or siblings with just one takeaway today, what would that be, Tammy?
Oh my gosh.
To take all the years of parenting and experience and take it down to one thing is hard, isn't it?
It is. Well, I think the first thing I would say is give yourself grace. If you're new as a special needs mom, and I say give yourself grace. And with kids who aren't special needs, they don't come with an instruction booklet. they have different challenges. But I would say I always say give yourself grace, and look for the blessings. And be grateful for the perspective. Jordan has changed so much, in our lives, and me personally in terms of perspective, whether it's personal things that happen or, professional things or just life in general. Perspective is so different than it would have been before Jordan came along. But I would say grace, giving yourself grace, and it will deepen your faith. Because you truly realize how dependent you are.
Yes.
On God to walk you through it and to lead you through it.
It definitely reminds us, right, of what our limitations are and how we have to depend on God for everything. But I love that. Give yourself grace. because there's just a lot, as we've talked about today, every kind of emotion, every kind of thing, and grace is definitely needed. Thank you, Tammy, for coming and for sharing your story today.
Thank you.
So at the end of every podcast, I like to share a funny story about my brother, and I invite all of you who are listening, if you have a funny story that you'd like to share, that you feel comfortable to share, we want to hear that, because we do want to share. There is a lot of joy in special needs families as well. Lots of things to laugh at, to laugh about. Just so many, many things. So my brother's name is Donnie, and he and I were just extremely close. But when I was living at home, he would hide my shoes all over the house so that whenever I would get ready to leave, and I'm a girl, I wanted a special pair of shoes, I would be like, Donnie, and he'd be like, not telling, not telling, not telling. And I'd say, I'm going to get you in trouble. And he's like, no, you're not. But he loved to hide my shoes. And, it provided a lot of laughs for all of us. Made me late for a few things, Tammy, but he just had a big time. And no matter where I tried to hide my shoes, he always found them. So, all right, Donnie, you made me laugh. But thank you so much for joining us. And please go to our Facebook page, and we will share the information from today and other links and resources. We really want the Raising Special Needs podcast to be a place for connection, for community, to ask questions, to get tips, to get help, and really for the message that you are not alone. We are in this together. So I will see you next time again on the Raising Special Needs Kids podcast.
Thank you for listening to Raising Special Needs Kids, a safe place for honest stories, practical help, and a whole lot of encouragement. We are so glad we're on this journey together, and we will see you next time.